$1 million. If you've spent any time thinking about retirement, that number has probably crossed your mind. It's the number magazines use, it's the number financial ads use. It's become a kind of finish line in people's heads. Hit $1 million and you're safe. Here's what nobody tells you. The man who actually invented the math behind that number has changed his mind about it. Twice. And right now, in 2026, the largest independent research firm in the investing world is publishing a number that's lower than what most people think they need, while the original creator of the rule is saying people could safely spend more than that. Two experts, same data, completely different answers. So if even the people who built this rule can't agree on it, why are you treating $1 million like it's a magic number that determines whether your retirement works or fails? Let's actually look at where this number came from and why it might be the most misleading piece of financial advice still floating around in 2026.
Here's the thing about the $1 million number. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from something called the 4% rule, created by a financial advisor named Bill Bengen back in 1994. The idea was simple. If you retire and withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year one, then adjust that amount upward every year for inflation, your money should last roughly 30 years without running out. On a $1 million portfolio, that's $40,000 a year. That's where the whole "I need $1 million" idea comes from. Not from your actual life, not from your actual expenses, from a math formula built in 1994, using market data going back to 1926, designed to survive the worst 30-year stretch in American financial history. The problem is, people took a research tool and turned it into a commandment. They stopped asking, what does my retirement actually cost? And started asking, have I hit the number? And those are very different questions with very different answers.
Let me show you something that almost nobody talks about. Bengen, the guy who created the 4% rule, has revised it more than once. In his most recent research, published in 2025, he says his updated safe withdrawal rate, what he now calls Safe Max, is closer to 4.7% for a properly diversified portfolio. And he's gone further than that, saying a withdrawal rate of 5.25% to 5.5% is a reasonable, conservative estimate for current retirees. Think about what that means in dollars. On a $1 million portfolio, the difference between 4% and 5.5% is the difference between $40,000 a year and $55,000 a year. That's roughly $15,000 more every single year, using the exact same amount of savings. Same $1 million, completely different lifestyle, depending on which version of the rule you follow.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. While Bengen is saying you can safely spend more, the research firm Morningstar, which publishes one of the most respected retirement studies every year, came out with a different number entirely. Their December 2025 report concluded that for someone retiring in 2026, the highest safe starting withdrawal rate for a balanced portfolio with a 90% chance of not running out of money over 30 years is 3.9%, not 4%, 3.9%. So in the same year, you have the original creator of the 4% rule saying you can safely withdraw over 5%, and one of the most respected research firms in the industry saying the safe number is actually under 4%. That's not a small disagreement. That's two completely different visions of what enough looks like, using the exact same starting point. And here's the obscure detail most people never hear about. Morningstar's number isn't based on historical market data the way Bengen's original rule was. It's based on forward-looking assumptions, where they think bond yields are headed, what current stock valuations suggest about future returns, and where they expect inflation to land, which means the safe number isn't really a fixed mathematical truth. It's a forecast, a prediction, and predictions change every single year depending on market conditions when you happen to retire.
This is the part that should genuinely surprise you. Back in 2021, when interest rates were near zero, Morningstar's safe withdrawal rate dropped all the way down to 3.3%. 5 years later, with higher bond yields, it's climbed back up. The number you're told to chase isn't fixed. It moves with the economy.
which means anyone telling you you need exactly $1 million is giving you a number that was already outdated the moment they said it. There's another flaw buried in here that almost nobody talks about, and it's called sequence of returns risk. Here's what that means in plain language. The 4% rule assumes a steady, predictable path, but markets don't move steadily. They crash and recover unevenly. If the market falls early in your retirement, you're forced to sell investments at a loss just to cover your living expenses, and those shares aren't there anymore when the market eventually recovers. Here's the wild part. Researchers at Fidelity modeled this exact scenario. A retiree starting with $1 million, withdrawing $50,000 a year. When the good market years came first, that retiree ended up with more than $3 million after 30 years. Same starting amount, same withdrawal rate. The only difference was the order the market years happened in. That's not something any amount of saving can control. It's pure timing.
And there's one more thing almost nobody mentions when they throw around the $1 million number. It completely ignores Social Security. The 4% rule assumes your portfolio is your only source of income. But most retirees also receive Social Security, which means the real amount available to spend is often higher than the $40,000 the formula implies. Yet the $1 million figure gets repeated as if it's the entire picture, when for most Americans, it's only part of the equation.
So here's the mindset shift. The $1 million number was never meant to be a target. It was meant to be a research tool, a rough starting point for a much more personal calculation. The fact that it became a cultural finish line says more about how much we crave a simple answer to a complicated question than it says about actual retirement math. The real question was never, do I have $1 million? The real question is, what does my actual life cost? What income am I bringing in from Social Security, from a pension, from part-time work if I choose to do some? What does my health situation look like? Where do I live, and what does that cost? Once you stop chasing a number that was built for an imaginary average person and start building a plan around your actual numbers, the entire conversation changes. Some people need far less than $1 million to retire comfortably because their expenses are lower and their Social Security covers more of their needs. Some people need far more because their lifestyle, their health costs, or their desire to leave something behind for family changes the math completely. There is no universal number. There's only your number, and the only way to find it is to actually do the work of calculating it instead of borrowing a headline.
So what do you actually do with this? First, stop anchoring your sense of progress to a single round number. $1 million sounds satisfying because it's round, not because it's accurate for your situation. Second, calculate your real number. Take your expected annual expenses in retirement, subtract whatever you'll receive from Social Security and any pension income, and what's left is what your investments actually need to cover. That gap, not some headline figure, is the number that matters. Third, understand that your withdrawal rate isn't fixed forever. Treat whatever rate you choose as a starting point, not a permanent rule, adjusting based on how markets perform and how your needs change over time. Research increasingly shows that retirees who are willing to spend a bit less during down markets and a bit more during good ones end up significantly ahead over a 30-year retirement compared to those who lock themselves into one fixed percentage forever. Fourth, if you're a few years from retiring and the market has a rough patch right before your retirement date, understand that timing matters more than most people realize. Having some flexibility, working a little longer, adjusting spending in those first few years can dramatically change your long-term outcome. And fifth, don't let a single number, whether it's $1 million or any other figure, become the measure of whether you're succeeding. The actual measure is whether your specific plan, built around your specific life, gets you where you want to go.
If you've spent years feeling like you're behind because you haven't hit some imaginary $1 million finish line, I want you to genuinely sit with this. Even the people who built that number can't agree on what it means anymore. The version of retirement planning that actually works isn't about chasing a headline.
It's about understanding your own numbers, your own expenses, your own sources of income, and building something that fits the actual shape of your life. You don't need $1 million. You need clarity. And clarity is something you can build starting today, regardless of what your account balance currently says. That's the real number that matters. I'll see you in the next one.